Welcome back to another episode of Boots on the Ground. Thank you to Jerusalem Media Group for our partnership. Today's episode, Shaun and I will be discussing the upcoming deal being brokered right now as we speak in Washington between Netanyahu and Trump. Before we get to that episode, I just want to say thank you to our sponsors at Be There Israel. For all those times that you can't be in Israel for an event, whether it was last-minute travel plans, cancellations, or family simchas or funerals that you can't make it to, Be There Israel has you covered. For their live streaming services, they can make it feel like you were here while you're 6,000 miles away. And now, let's get into the show. Hey, Shaun, how you doing?
Good, thanks, Ari. How are you?
It's good to be back here.
Good to be back. Lots to discuss this week.
All right. So before we start, just a reminder, we're recording this while BB is right now in Washington, having dinner with Donald Trump, discussing what's going to be in our future here.
Well, I think the most important thing that we need to discuss, whether it comes up or not, is any type of potential deal with regards to Hamas in Gaza, release of hostages, and a potential ceasefire. Those are going to be the most important discussions that we need to have right now.
All right. So while they're over there discussing it over a good dinner, let's get into it. What are the biggest issues that any deal that they make is going to have to take into account?
Well, before any deal becomes a reality, we need to look at what's changed significantly over the last couple of months. Going back even to the beginning of the war, you had Yahya Sinwar, who was leading Hamas in Gaza, and he was, for all intents and purposes, calling the shots of any type of deal, whether it's a ceasefire or a hostage deal. After he was eliminated by Israel, his brother took over, and now his brother's also been eliminated by Israel. So the question is...
His cousin now?
Right. The question is, who's calling the shots? Even if a deal is brokered by President Trump, and even if Prime Minister Netanyahu agrees to it, who's the guy in charge who's going to say yes or no? And more importantly, what is the disconnect between Hamas people on the ground in Gaza and the Hamas political leadership in Qatar at any one given time? That disconnect and that lack of leadership is a major issue that I don't think is being properly addressed by anybody. Then we have the practicality of any real deal. Starting with the hostages. Is it going to be a gradual hostage release? In which case we have, sorry to say it, the sick question of choosing people. Who gets to go home, who doesn't? And what also happens with the bodies of the Israelis who we know have been either kidnapped as bodies or were killed in captivity. Again, not pleasant things, but we need to think about that. The next stage is what's going to happen to the IDF in Gaza. Are they going to withdraw to battle lines that they achieved over the last couple of months? Are they going to go back to battle lines where they were a year ago? None of that is very clear. And then the next question is a ceasefire. Is it going to be a short-term ceasefire with an opportunity to extend? Is it going to be an immediate ceasefire? Is it going to be long-term like Hamas wants that keeps them in power? All of those questions are incredibly relevant, and there's no deal at the moment or proposed that can correctly answer all of those questions.
All right, well, I think before we get into the details of any deal, I think we have to answer one really big question first, which is, what do we want to be in Gaza after this, right? We can make a deal now for, a ceasefire, returning some hostages, letting some of the Hamas members that we have in captivity in our jails out of jail in return for them. We can make all of those deals, 10 times between now and next week. But the question is what's the goal that Israel's trying to achieve? What's the goal that Hamas is trying to achieve? And is there some compromise that can be reached in the middle? From where I'm sitting, Hamas wants to maintain its control in Gaza and stay in power. They want the IDF and Israel out. Israel wants Hamas completely annihilated, removed from Gaza, and some other unspoken entity, whether it's some conglomerate of Arab states, it's local gangs and clans, or what everyone is not willing to say, the IDF itself should be in charge, in my opinion, obviously. Is there some middle ground between those two positions that can be reached? Because I think without finding out or discovering what that middle ground is, any deal we make is going to be very, very temporary, and it's definitely going to be worse for us.
That's exactly the problem. There is no middle ground here because Hamas wants to survive and Israel wants Hamas eliminated. The middle ground is only some of Hamas is eliminated and some of it survives, but both sides want a zero-sum game. Any compromise that leaves Hamas anywhere near standing or in power is an Israeli failure. Alternatively, anything that completely wipes out Hamas is an Israeli victory, but a Hamas failure. There is no room for compromise here. Unfortunately, that means that any deal that leaves Hamas in power means Israel has failed in that major objective.
Well, then I guess our show's over. We have no answer to the question. I'm just kidding. But now taking that reality into account, then what is it that Bibi's trying to achieve with this deal? What's his goal? If we've accepted the fact that he's not trying to achieve the goal, right? He's not actually trying to achieve the goal of removing Hamas completely, then what's the point of making this deal? Where does this upcoming deal, in whatever details it's going to have, what's the ultimate purpose of it?
So I think there is a real purpose, and I disagree with you saying that that Netanyahu doesn't want to achieve anything. Netanyahu, on the 8th of October in 2023, made it very clear we have two goals, and he still believes very much in that. And I think his entire cabinet really believes in it. The goals are, in no particular order, the return of all the hostages and the absolute defeat of Hamas. Now, we are nearly 2 years into this war, and he hasn't achieved them. And that is a problem, especially for somebody like Netanyahu, who built his entire persona around security. And as of now, he is still reeling as the person at the top of the pyramid on October 7th. And now, significant time into the war, hostages are still in Gaza, Hamas is still around, and we're still losing soldiers. So he needs to achieve
Something.
The problem is a compromise, like we spoke about, getting some of the hostages back, getting some of Hamas defeated, isn't achieving the goals of the war. And unless, again, it can be repackaged as some type of victory, it's not an achievement.
All right, well, I think, can I present what might be viewed as a very cynical opinion of what he's trying to accomplish here?
Go for it. We're among friends here.
We're all amongst friends. So for all of our listeners, I really hope that what I'm about to say is not true, and it's just me being very cynical. But I think that when we look at the timeline of any deal that's been spoken about, the rumors that are flying, and the timeline in Israeli politics at the moment, is things start to line up. At the moment, the legislative season is coming close to an end, and it only comes back into session after the holidays. We're talking about, the middle of October. All the deals they're talking about are a 60-day ceasefire, a 70-day ceasefire. That basically carries us over throughout the entire legislative vacation, right up until the new legislative winter session begins, which means that his coalition is very stable because he can't bring his coalition down because there's no legislative process going on. My theory is, my very, very cynical, very hopefully not true theory, is that he's going to make another deal similar to the last one, where there's going to have stages of implementation with gradual releases in order to keep his coalition together throughout the summer. He'll have little small successes of hostages being returned. And at the end, he's then present to the nation of Israel, we need to go to an election now to elect a real, strong, even more right-wing, stronger leadership in order to deliver that final blow to Gaza, just like we did in Iran. That's what I think is going on. I seriously hope I'm very wrong and that's very cynical of me. Time will tell, but I think that the reality is it's another stopgap measure where let me try and get a few more hostages out. In the meantime, hoping that the intelligence or the reality on the ground will change into a way that we can use military force to release our other hostages, to rescue them, whether they be unfortunately dead or alive. And the reality is that he's not, there's talk of we've been using military force this whole time and it hasn't worked. But the reality is we haven't been using our military force the way that it's being spoken about. We're not using the strength that he has, and he's looking to get to a point where now the math is a little bit more on his side. There are fewer hostages to worry about. The numbers come down, and then we can really go in strong again to finish the end off. That's what I see happening.
It's an incredibly cynical point of view.
Incredibly cynical.
Unfortunately, I kind of agree with you. There are a number of other aspects at play when it comes to all of this. But if we're already speaking in this,
let's get into that
area. So the other aspect within all of this is the Haredi draft. We've spoken about it before. The fact that much of Netanyahu's coalition is actually made up of the ultra-Orthodox Haredi parties, and they are determined to veto any type of draft of Haredim, of the ultra-Orthodox, into the army. So we have a bizarre situation where Netanyahu is pushing for military force. We're desperate for more manpower, for the IDF to be stronger, yet his major coalition partners are adamant that
we don't get more manpower.
Haredi men won't go into the army. And they're supporting Netanyahu. And Netanyahu needs their support because he can't get support from anywhere else. Now, like you said, if he plays the long game, if we get a 60-day ceasefire that takes us into the summer vacation, that takes us all the way then to the Chagim, he can play for time, and he doesn't have to do anything, do any type of legislation for the Haredi draft. The time can lapse, and that can be done.
Exactly.
And he avoids it completely, which is incredibly cynical, but it plays into Netanyahu's political maneuvering, which is why he's been so good for so long. The other problem with all of that, and this is a huge thing that I think Netanyahu needs to think about, is the hostage family forum, the main hostage family forum, the Yellow Ribbon people. They are, and again, I can't even imagine what some of these family members are going through, but on a cynical level, as we've been saying, they are an incredibly wealthy lobby group right now. And the minute we go to elections, those same people who have been pushing for a hostage deal will use their leverage, their money, and their network to campaign against Netanyahu and his government.
Oh, for sure. But that's a given obvious, I think, to anyone who's watching the Israeli political front. That entire forum is the next embodiment of the anti-Netanyahu Kaplan movement. They just morphed and picked up a different point to coagulate around. Those families, it's the families themselves, while I'm sure some of them agree or disagree, that's what they're being wrapped up in. And I think that that same forum might be the ones pushing him to make the deal. And we hear it on the news here all the time, one big deal to bring them all home. I don't think anyone who thinks about it for more than 2 seconds thinks that the Hamas is going to make a deal that gives all the hostages back in one shot. That's just not realistic. That's their only insurance policy that they have right now.
Right. I think it's very important. We need to explain what you just said. And this is vital because everyone wants all the hostages back. Doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you are. We want all the hostages back in Israel, dead or alive, preferably as many alive as possible. Now, Hamas knows that as well. Hamas knows that the Israeli population we're desperate to get the hostages back. Now, the line of thinking is...
That's also, they know, but that's also why they took hostages.
Right, absolutely.
Because they understand that is where the nation of Israel, the Jewish people are, is that our brothers and their being alive and well is way more important to us than killing our enemy.
Right.
And always. It's always going to be that way.
Hamas knows this. So the idea is, well, let's get all the hostages back, make any deal we can. Doesn't matter. Do almost suicidal ideas and let thousands of terrorists go and we'll get all the hostages back. And then when we have all the hostages, we release the full might of our army and conquer Gaza and defeat Hamas. That's what people are saying and that's what they think about. But Hamas knows this. They're not stupid. They know that as long as they can maintain a small amount of hostages, dozens or even a few individuals, then Israel's military is hamstrung. The people are hamstrung. They're never going to get to the point where everyone comes back because then they know that they've got no insurance policy left, like you said.
They have no shield left.
So this entire idea of make a deal and get all the hostages no matter what, it's playing into the hands of Hamas. And I mean that with all due respect to the suffering of the families. Hamas knows this. They're never going to give us back all the hostages because they know that is a death sentence for them.
Right. So the idea, so there's no concept that there's going to be one big deal, like, like Trump has his one big, the big beautiful bill. There's no big beautiful deal coming that's going to bring all the hostages home in one fell swoop. That's not happening. That's not realistic. That's not honest. Anyone who's like pushing that narrative is just wishful thinking on steroids. So the best then I think that anyone can get is a staged release over time, where at the end of the day, there is no final stage. There's always someone, probably alive, being held onto as an insurance policy. I can't imagine anyone giving that up. The question is, though, could we use that staged release to, yes, lower the numbers, get more and more people home, to the point where now instead of having to go rescue 20 people in a military operation, we have to go rescue 2 or 1, which is still extraordinarily difficult and very complicated and very risky, but it's way more feasible than rescuing 20, for argument's sake.
So I don't know about that. I can't comment on that issue just because I don't want to think about it too much. But there's the other aspect of looking at how Hamas has negotiated since the beginning of the war. And it's been very interesting, especially as we've gotten to the last 6 to 8 months of negotiation. Their tactic has been almost identical, regardless of who's been in charge, is the various different mediators, whether it's Witkoff on behalf of the United States or Qatar or the Egyptians or even the Israelis who are meeting in Doha, they come up with some type of deal.
Right.
Now, what happens is the deal is then presented to the Israelis and to Hamas. Usually what has happened until now is Israel says yes, and we'll wait to hear what Hamas says. Hamas delays and delays and delays, and then they release a statement to the media saying, yes, we accept it, but we need to make a few adjustments. 12 hours later, we hear what their adjustments are, and then Israel says, these aren't minor adjustments. This is not a deal at all. We agreed to something completely different. Hamas has completely thrown that out the window. And then then suddenly the media narrative is, well, Hamas accepted, Israel rejected. And we go back to the beginning. And this has been what is happening now for months, is Israel says yes, Hamas says we'll think about it, we want to make some changes. And then Israel says we don't accept your changes, and that's how the ball keeps rolling.
Right. So with all of that negotiating and all that process taken into account, and the reality that we're not getting everyone back all in one fell swoop, it gets us back to that question of how do we negotiate some sort of a deal that, while temporary, at least brings us closer to whatever this ultimate goal is for Gaza, right? Whatever deal we make now is going to leave Hamas in power in the meantime. It's going to get some of the hostages released. It's going to require some of the IDF to retreat to some extent. How far is yet to be seen. But the question is what are the other things that we can be thrown into this deal in order to achieve some more of a solution for Gaza? In the end of the day, Hamas isn't going to be there. In the end of the day, the hostages are going to come home. The question is when and how long it's going to take. But what's the actual idea for what's going to be in Gaza afterwards?
So there are a number of, what you said is very interesting. There are a number of things that we need to take into consideration for the medium term and for the long term of Gaza. We assume right now that Gazans need food, water, and basic supplies. There are 2 major ways that Gazans are getting food and supplies. The one is through a variety of United Nations frameworks, which are being funneled through Hamas and ensuring that Hamas stays well-fed, well-equipped, and they siphon off huge amounts before giving it to the local population. The other is what's called the Gaza Humanitarian Fund, which is jointly run by the US and Israel, and that is providing free food. Now, Hamas and its allies are doing everything they can to badmouth, in some cases, physically sabotage any type of alternative aid mechanism, particularly this Gaza Humanitarian Fund. It has gotten to the point where you have the most ridiculous stories now in the news about people being shot and killed when they're going to try and get food. It's why it's so crazy is Why is it in Israel's interest to make it more difficult for people to get food from Israel? Why is it in Israel's interest to shoot people getting food from Israel? It makes no sense. Israel wants their alternative to work. They wouldn't sabotage it. Alternatively, the people who do want to sabotage it are Hamas and the people on their payroll. Unfortunately, that also means the do-gooders and would-be NGOs and organizations that claim that they have Gaza's best interests at heart. In actual fact, they don't. They have their own, because if the Gaza Humanitarian Fund run by Israel and the US works, you don't need all those NGOs. And that brings to the next point, the rebuild.
It's way, before we go on to the next point, all those NGOs that are working, that have been working with Hamas for decades now, and continue to work with them, knowing now they can't pretend that they don't know who Hamas is anymore. By their mechanism failing and the mechanism that's being run by the United States and Israel working, that means they have to admit that they've been funding a terrorist organization this whole time, publicly. Even though we all know it to be true, they have to outright say that we failed, where the Americans and the Israelis succeeded, and then hand Israel a victory almost. Which is way more important to not let Israel win than to actually help Gaza.
Right. Well, quick
because
tangent.
their whole purpose is just to fight Israel. Again, all the NGOs that you're talking about, they're supporting Hamas before the war.
Right. Quick tangent here, and I think this is important to point out, especially considering the upcoming meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I mentioned the United Nations and all their bodies with regards to the NGOs and everything else. Important to realize that they are not only are they not part of the solution, they're part of the problem. The entire UN apparatus that has been acting for years, not just UNRWA, but all the aid mechanisms and the anti-Israel bad-mouthing, maybe that is part of Trump's long-term goal, and that may be something he's going to present to Netanyahu. But that's a segue. I don't think it's worth talking about right now until we have a bit more clarity on the situation. That is the first issue I want to speak about is short-term and the first thing I want to speak about, medium and long-term goals in Gaza, is establishing an alternative to Hamas. First, with regards to aid and supplies, and then, most importantly, with rebuilding. There needs to be an alternative that doesn't include Hamas as any part of the equation. And right now, nobody, including the Israeli government, has presented a viable long-term alternative, because we need to speak about maintaining basic law and order, food, and then rebuilding. Or, as a lot of people say, and I'm not necessarily agreeing with this, or what is going to happen with the Gaza population? Are they going to be moved out permanently? Are they going to be moved out temporarily? Are they going to be rehoused while parts of Gaza is going to be built? This is a major question that nobody right now can provide a real answer for.
I don't know if no one can provide a real answer for. There was the original Trump plan to depopulate Gaza and have them immigrate all around the world, and then take the population, which is highly indoctrinated, which is extraordinarily ill-fit for a Western liberal worldview, that wants, as a society, their goal was to destroy Israel. In the end of the day, they elected Hamas. They supported Hamas. To this day, they still support Hamas and what they did. So in the end of the day, I think that, that the only real solution for Gaza is to follow through on the Trump plan, is to spread them out, like Nebuchadnezzar would do with people he captured back in ancient Babylon, is spread them out so that they get assimilated and diluted into the societies they move into. We've spoke about this in the past, where it's not practical, moving so many people around the world. There's not enough airplanes. There's not enough boats.
And there's not enough desire, and there are serious practical and in some cases also ethical problems with doing that.
I mean, I don't think there's ethical problems with it, but practically speaking, when there's a will, there's a way, and there's always a solution. I also think there's the entire part of Sinai. Let's move them there.
So again, this is where we're going to start disagreeing.
That's okay. We can always disagree.
But the practicality, we're talking about moving millions of people. Again, beyond the practicals and I wouldn't say ethical, the moral issues of moving millions of people. Who's going to do it? How are we going to do it?
I'm volunteering.
Right. I don't think many, again, I love my unit. I love this serving in the IDF. I can't see many people willing to do this voluntarily. even being forced to do it. And we're talking about a huge open desert. You're not going to be able to just one day move people there. And yeah, the Egyptians don't want them either.
Exactly.
So there are way too many problems with.
Say we're gonna leave that on the side because
Yeah.
neither one of us is going to really compromise on that as a solution. But in the end of the day, there needs to be, there will always be. The reality is, no matter how much I like to think it's not true, there will always be Gazans that live in Gaza,
Right.
and there needs to be some sort of a mechanism that runs the civil society and controls civil society in Gaza. And I think that in the end of the day, like I've said in the past, is I think we need to man up and say, listen, there's no mechanism that exists in the world that we can trust. In the end of the day, the only physical power that's armed in the region needs to be Israel. It needs to be our army, our soldiers, our uniforms. No one else can protect the Jewish people. We can't rely on anyone else, and it's not anyone else's, responsibility. So the only armed group between the river and the sea needs to be the IDF and the Israel Police Force and the Kitat Konenut.
So again, I agree with you in practice that the
No.
only armed force capable of defending the state of Israel and the people of Israel is the Israeli Defense Force and its various mechanisms. The problem is we're talking about protecting Israel, but let's say the war ends, Hamas is defeated. Who's going to be policing the streets of Khan Yunis? Who's going to be building the schools in Gaza? Who's going to be on the streets night and day making sure that Hamas individuals aren't trying to plan terror attacks again? Who's going to be doing all of that? And consider already we have a manpower shortage in the IDF.
Well, I have two answers. One is more of a joke, is we have all the Haredim that we can draft. Now we have what for them to do. No, I think that you're hitting on 2 points. And one, I think, is the foundational issue that we've refused to accept. That the beginnings of everything is an education. Whoever builds the school doesn't matter. The question is who's teaching what inside the school. And in the end of the day, if we don't control the education and we don't control the indoctrination, doesn't matter what beautiful mechanism we come up with or what great amount of money is invested, we're going to be right back where we started from a year and a half ago, whether it's in 10 years, in 5 years, in 50 years, unless we control the education, not do the educating, but we are in charge of what's taught in the school and we design the curriculum and we could check and confirm that what we're saying needs to be taught is taught, we're going to be right back in the same place. It's just a matter of time. So no, do I think we need to build the schools? No, let the Qataris or the Saudis or the Emirates, let one of them fund building the school. Whoever does the construction, all's wonderful. But in the end of the day, we need to control what gets taught. Do I think we need to police the streets, walk around with an armed guard like police? No. But whoever's there, should they be armed anything more than a baseball bat? No. Because in the end of the day, whatever weapon you give them is going to be used against you. The question is a matter of when. And in the end of the day, that person, whoever he may be, needs to answer to you. You need to be, you and I, as Israel, as the IDF, we need to be the ultimate body in control of what's going on in Gaza. And everyone there needs to recognize, at the end of the day, they were conquered, they were subservient at first, and they were wrong and they failed. And now, out of the goodness of our hearts, we're allowing them the ability to rehabilitate. And I think that that's a really important message, because unless we do that, we're just going to keep the cycle going again and again and again. And then, again, our sons will be fighting the same wars we're fighting instead of not fighting at all or doing something different.
Okay. The challenge with what you've said is, even if I were to agree with it, that means any negotiation we do right now, any withdrawal we do right now, any hostage deal we do right now makes that ultimate goal of yours more difficult and harder to achieve.
Correct.
So then all we're doing is we're making short-term goals that will cost us more lives, and we're making deals that will cost us more time and energy and soldiers in the future.
Correct. Which is why at the beginning when I came up with my very cynical explanation for what's going on right now, which is why I was actually afraid that that's really the reasoning behind what's going on. Because any deal we make pushes off any victory even further and therefore increases the price that we're going to pay. In the end of the day, we're at that point now where more soldiers have died than hostages were taken. We crossed that line a long time ago. And again, there's a very big difference between a civilian being taken hostage from a music festival and a soldier dying in battle. I'm not equating the two, very different things. But the reality is the price that we're paying now, if we would have had on October 8th or October 12th, after we regained, control of the air territory within Israel already, if we just shook in our hands and say we're done at this point, we would have saved way more lives than where we are at now. And in the end of the day, what we're at now, we're in a much better place. We're thousands of times better. And any deal we make is going to be a step backwards. The question is what are we gaining by taking that step? Is it one step back in order to take two steps forwards? Or is it one step back to serve some very cynical, very political idea, which is what I'm afraid of?
So part of that cynical idea and that political goal is it's not just the current Netanyahu administration that we're talking about. It's also his opposition, the Israeli left, the parliamentary opposition, the Knesset opposition, and also, as we said before, the hostage families are basically in opposition, a political opposition to Netanyahu and his government. So a deal serves the political interests of everyone who has some vested interest in a deal, except the long-term interests of the state of Israel. It's good for Netanyahu because he gets to buy time. It's good for his coalition because they get to extend their time. It's good for the Israeli opposition because they can notch up a victory. It's good for the hostage families because they get some people back and they get a victory and they can strengthen their position against Netanyahu. So ironically, it's a win-win for all of the political echelons. It's just a lose for the state of Israel long term.
It's not just the state of Israel, it's the entire Jewish people. It's a short-term victory for all the political entities, and it's a long-term loss for the nation of Israel. It puts us in a position puts the nation of Israel that's currently in a place of great strength after what we did in Iran. It puts us now back into a position of weakness, which comes to the ultimate question of, is Israel ever allowed to actually win? Is anyone going to let us actually have our victory? And that's a much bigger question that we can discuss another time.
Right. I think we're about out of time. We need to end on a positive note because I don't like the conclusion I just came to.
And it's our custom that we always end on something optimistic. So why don't you go first?
Well, I'll tell you, we have to end on a positive note, and I'm a little disheartened by what I heard right now. But one of the things that actually made me more positive about Israel in the future was looking around Jerusalem this week. Jerusalem right now, the entire city is a mess. It's a construction nightmare. There are cables all over the place. They are rebuilding part of the light rail system. They're extending it. The public transport system has been completely redone in certain parts. Some buses are running sporadically. Some buses are running extra, but they do different routes. The entire city is a mess. And the goal is to have this partially cleaned up within the next 6 months to a year, which probably won't happen. Where's the silver lining? Where's my positive message on this is we're constantly thinking about the future. Right now, Jerusalem, the city I love and I live in, is an absolute mess. Why? Because we know in the future it's going to be far better. It's worth making a mess now so that in the future more people can get to work, more people can come live in Jerusalem, more people can come play in Jerusalem, more kids can get around easier in Jerusalem. It is safer, it is easier, it is better. And sometimes it is worth making a mess now so that we constantly look to the future and say it'll be better, especially for us, but especially for our children.
Oh, that's a powerful statement. Is that you're motivated by seeing the future. Is that no matter how bad it ever gets for Am Yisrael, we're always looking to the future and the brighter future that we have.
Right.
So I think that's a great place to lead off on this note. Looking forward, looking to the future, looking to the amazing and bright future that we have here, no matter what political upheaval we have going on. So on that note, everybody, let's remember to thank you for watching. Join us again, like, share, and again, just keep looking forward to the future. I want to say thank you to the people at Jerusalem Media Group and Be There Israel for sponsoring today's show. And remember, see you next time. And until then, I'm Yisrael Chai.